Well, good morning, and it is Friday. TGIF. Wow. The 10th of June. Where the hell has the month gone? And the year 2022. Where the hell has the century gone? How can it possibly be 2022? We're almost through the first quarter of the 22nd century. Is it the 21st century? The 21st century, I guess. I get lost with these things, it's sad that time roars by, and that we've had a great sadness over the last 3 years. And it just seems like yesterday that we were being told to face the wall and not do anything and not go anywhere and not breathe anything and not touch anything. And still today, we have hanging over us the COVID plague. I was in my chemist yesterday, drugstore, I suppose some people would call it. And I see now that if you self-test, it's cost you £2.50. Now I can see lots of people rushing to get that test. Yes, some people will because they're fastidious, but I think a large percentage of the population will not. And as a consequence, I think that a lot of the COVID precautions are beginning to drop by the wayside, and you can notice on public transport, people are not wearing masks anymore. Social distancing is not recognised in most of the pubs or the restaurants, although some of the staff still try to apply it. So that's the sort of day that we are facing today, the sort of decade that we're facing. Nobody knows what the hell is going to happen. But the war in Ukraine has come back into the headlines because there is outrage over captured British fighters who have been sentenced to death by a kangaroo court in Ukraine, but set up by the Russians, who say that these two gentlemen are mercenaries, even though they fought in the Ukrainian or were part of the Ukrainian army long before this hostility broke out. So we are all being drawn into this, and I'm sure that it's probably part of Putin's strategy. And I'm afraid that we just have to put up with it. We just have to put up with it. And it's a great pity that all this has broken out the way that it has. It is not nice. And particularly for those individuals, it must be really worrying, because they have been found guilty, which means that they could be marched out and put in front of a firing squad at the drop of a hat. President Putin wakes up with a hangover. Wham, bam, you've gone, man. The Metro, Putin's pawns. Putin's pawns is, the Metro says, is Aidan Aslin and Sean Pinner are the two soldiers in question. And let's see who we're reporting on here. The Metro, the London paper, says it could be different, but God will be one who judges me when the time comes. A very phlegmatic approach, I think. British men sentenced to death in a show trial, and this was held behind closed doors. No transparency whatsoever, and the guilty verdict subject to the death penalty. It'd be interesting what we'll do if they should be executed. I wonder whether Mr. Putin is pushing us far enough to give him an excuse to pop a rocket over, perhaps to destroy one of the small northern towns, just to say, look, this is what we're capable of, and we are prepared to do it. The Daily Mail, UK outrage as 2 Brits face the firing squad. Yeah. The Guardian, low-paid care workers can't afford petrol to get to work, or neither can the rest of us. So I do understand the care workers have got a problem. I think that what they're pointing out is the care workers aren't paid very much, and that's probably true. But I think there are an awful lot of people. What worries me is that we're going to have a sector of society that can afford to ignore this. £100 an average tank of petrol in an average family car, and that their 2 or 3 cars will continue to buzz along, eating up precious fuel and throwing out energy patterns which are not healthy for us. The Times, drivers join rail strikes as balance set to spread. All right, we're in for a bad time on the railways. And I think that we are also in a bad time for airlines as well. Everybody, when there's chaos, the unions pounce, they strike. And they're striking both in terms of flights, ground staff, and the airplanes themselves. Apparently, there are about 30,000 pilots' jobs going. They can't find pilots for them. They laid everybody off in the pandemic, and now nobody wants to go back to work. And that's the point. Nobody wants to go back to work. And that's the really frightening and sad thing, is there's every evidence. In fact, one of the interviewees on the BBC News this morning, and let's give credit where credit is due, because they did a good job this morning, I think. And they don't always, but they did this morning. And they had a chap on who is recruiting for jobs in the airline industry. And he says, and I'm sure that this is reflected in other sectors, he says that people turn up for an interview. They have their initial interview and they are offered a second interview, and they show great enthusiasm. 60% of them don't show up for the second interview. I guess they've just done enough to go down to the to whatever we call this place where you get jobs, the job center and so on, and to sign on. Yeah, give me a whole package of money so that I can actually go and drink myself silly this week and not have to go back to work. Don't have to get up. I've got used to not getting up. So the whole thing is in a serious mess. The Daily Express, millions given a chance to buy their own home. The Express is very faithful to supporting the government. And this is the one initiative, or one of the initiatives, that it is said could save Boris's skin. Anyway, he's launched it. And he said the 2.5 million housing association tenants will be allowed to buy their homes, and it will be made easier for leaseholders to buy the freehold. Well, it's not a bad initiative. Frankly, with everything going on around it, I can't get terribly excited about it myself, but then I'm not in the position to want to buy my home. The Financial Times, Sunak lost £11 billion of taxpayers' cash in a debt blunder. Apparently, against inflation, against raise in interest rates, insurance can be taken out. And the government decided not to take it out. And now they've been hit because of this sharp and severe rise in inflation. Is that 11 billion quid of money has to be paid, which wouldn't have if we'd have taken out the insurance. Oh, dearie me. How can we go along with these things? The Daily Mirror, sentenced to death by Putin. The Mirror is back on track on getting on board with some of the other papers. The Mirror has always been a fairly respectable paper, although it is left of centre. It's always had fairly good instincts in terms of journalism. Its role as a newspaper in our society. So it's a paper I do pay attention to. The Sun, which has bowed out of getting involved in anything to do with government. It just simply doesn't seem to want to criticize anybody, whichever side, unless it's absolutely vital that it's pulled in. But just like Mum Diana, and it's about Prince William, who apparently went and sold the big issue yesterday. And it says that his mother Diana would slip out of the palace and go and try to help with the homeless, and say that William is in some ways copying his mother and doing the same thing. And the Daily Star, we're now snoozing at 35,000 feet. Good old Star. It comes up with all sorts of little stories that the rest of us miss. And it is said that the pilots are so fatigued with their flying routines that they don't want to go to work. And the stories say, well, planes are run by computers, so what on earth can go wrong at 35,000 feet? I don't have the same faith in computers as the Star does, but as usual, it raises a little smile to the lips. Okay. Now, one local story that is very important. Excuse me while I take a sip. Served to me this morning, by the way, by the beautiful Shannon, who is the one of the three front of house people here at the White Hart Hotel, which is where we broadcast from. And Shannon, Jane, and Sally are the people that you are likely to meet, and three nicer people you could not wish to meet. They always have a lovely smile. They've got patience. They look after you, and so on. This morning it was Shannon, and she tells me that she hauled herself out of bed and came into work. She's got to leave at 3 o'clock on the dot because she needs to catch a train to London, and she's going to a wedding in London, which will keep her there until the last train tonight. She's going to get that last milk train home. It takes about an hour and a half instead of the hour and 10 minutes that normally take. It's an interesting train. I've taken it many, many times myself in the past. But she's then going to be on deck here at 6 o'clock tomorrow morning with that beautiful smile of hers. And I said to her, she doesn't quite know what sort of wedding it is, except that it's in central London. So I said, next week, come on and tell us all about it, because I have no idea what weddings are like anymore, anywhere in the world. I think that was Sally escaping to go and play a little tennis, but I'm not absolutely sure. She and husband Cliff take it in turns to walk the dog. It's somewhere between now and 10 o'clock. So that could be that could have been intent as well. Okay. So those are the newspaper headlines. One very important item locally. At the 11th hour, common sense prevailed, and the magistrates or the licensing authority, whoever it is now, have granted a license to the event that's taking place in Southover Grange Park. It's the Lewis Gin and Fizz Festival, and it got its license at the last minute. How can you have a gin festival if you haven't actually got a license? To serve booze, and gin has sort of come alive as an in drink now. You can get all sorts of varieties, and they are on display at this gin festival. as the magistrates did. They heard the emergency hearing. They granted the license, and so the Gin and Fizz Festival is on. Everybody, on. It's tomorrow, and it's in the South Evergrange Park. And why don't we? Because I just loved when I take a break to go into that park. This is where the show takes place tomorrow, the Gin and Fizz Festival. Well, again, the Gin and Fizz Festival takes place tomorrow. Go and have a gin and it. I think that was the popular drink in the 1950s and 1960s when gin and Italian is a gin and it was a gin and Italian. And Italian was a vermouth, which was reasonably new to the market. Although I do think that sometimes that they substituted Dubonnet. I really don't know. I've been a healthy drinker all my life, but I've never really got into the ins and outs of it. A couple of other things that just locally, while we're talking locally, let's see. Sussex Children's Charity celebrates National Volunteers Week. No, it wasn't that. Police searching for a man missing at sea in Newhaven, and that's always a worry. It's so easy to get dragged into the sea at these coastal resorts. It's lovely down there at Newhaven, at Seaford. I was down there for lunch 2 weeks ago, perhaps, and lunched at the golf club, and afterwards just went down to the beach to sit and ruminate for half an hour. I get very little time to myself, so it was very welcome, although I was with two friends. But one of the things that, of course, is that still idiots go and stand on the little bit of the cliff and look down. It's a little bit of the cliff could give way at any moment. Why they do it? Well, I suppose they show a photograph. Look, I actually diced with death or whatever. Absolute rubbish and absolute nonsense. But anyway, there's a man missing at sea, and there's a search on for him. And perhaps the other notable thing is that the Lewes District Council have stabilised the wall of the grounds of Lewes Castle. They about a year ago, I guess, they collapsed in rubble. They made some people homeless who had got homes in that area around the castle. And at long last, somebody has decided who's responsible for it, and it looks as if it's Lewes District Council. They've got their finger out, and now some of those people can go back. And we also can walk safely because there was the Magic Garden, I think it's called, which is a lovely little place that the the town council, I'm sorry, I think it was the town council, had put aside some money to have redone. And one of our colleagues, Paul Miles, was involved in getting the thing going again. And it was a lovely, lovely little place where it had been a miserable, shabby bit of the town where the druggies had been using it. And then it became a really magic place where you could go and sit and relax. And I'm afraid to say that it was a victim of the collapse of the walls. So I hope that it is back in operation and that people can go and enjoy that. Right you are. Where are we now? We are at 8:55. Later on, we have as a guest I'm sorry, I've lost my place here. Is Ian Williams, who was a foreign correspondent for Channel 4 and for NBC in the States. He was based in Russia and then Asia, and he got to know the big powers such as Russia and such as China, and he's written a book and based on the cyber revolution that has taken place in China, about which we know very little, and yet it will have a huge and is likely to have a huge impact on our society. Right, well, what we've been doing this week is we've been replaying some old favorites. Let's see if we can find a couple that would suit the timbre, is that the word, of the morning. Right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some video of the driving through the Canadian Rockies. And why am I going to show you that? Because our lovely motoring correspondent, who has been a bit quiet recently, but is gearing up for the Furl Hill climb, which he organizes, is Rupert Lloyd Thomas. Drove across Canada in his smart car, 4,000 miles, and we did a program on it. And part of that program showed him going through the Rockies. So this is the sort of terrain that if you are driving in Western Canada, that you will actually find. So let's take a look.
Hard to be filming in the car here because the road is rough, patched up all over the place, and hard to keep the camera steady.
Now, it's dramatic stuff. I have driven that section of the Transgender Highway through Rockland itself. And in fact, as a young man, 18-year-old, I guess, I spent the summer working in building the Transcanada Highway. And that was but it is dramatic, extreme, and it is wonderful, wonderful scenery. And if you ever get a chance to go on either the road that you saw there, and the reason we're showing it is because Rupert Lloyd Thomas, a Louisian, drove his smart car across Canada, and that was the final leg is going through the Rockies and that magnificent scenery, and it is magnificent. But you can either take the rail or you can take the road. If you take the rail, you can get a seat on the. In those days, it was called the Canadian. I don't know whether they call it now, but it starts off at Banff and it winds its way through the Rockies and goes into the famous spiral tunnels, where you can get a seat into a viewing car on the very last coach of the train, and you can see the front of the train coming out of the tunnels, sort of 1,000 feet below you, or perhaps not 1,000 feet, but 500 or so feet below you, before you actually have even entered the tunnel. So quite a fascinating experience, and one that every family should undergo. Okay, we are. Where are we? We're the papers we were taking a look at, and there's the issue this morning of the two so-called mercenaries, according to Mr. Putin, who have been found guilty of being mercenaries, in other words, fighting against the Russian forces as not legitimate combatants. And the penalty is death. And they've been sentenced to death by firing squad. And as they are Britons, we obviously have to take a view that we must help them in all ways that we can. It's one of those tricky situations for the government because what happens in these circumstances is that the Russians have said, if you interfere in this, we will actually take it that you are a hostile nation and that we can legitimately take a pop at you. Now, does that mean with Mr. Putin that he will send rockets towards Britain or not? You know, there are a lot of people that just simply say, no, certainly not. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't do that. But there are an awful lot that said he wouldn't invade Ukraine either. I think that we need to keep an eye on this situation and take into account a number of things that could happen. And one of them is that Mr. Putin could, particularly if we press for the release or at least commutation of these so-called mercenary soldiers who have been found guilty by a kangaroo court to all intents and purposes. There's nothing transparent about it. In fact, it was held behind closed doors, and they have been sentenced to death from any time now. So really, it is quite easy for I'm just checking because our output seems a little bit low this morning. No, it's all it's all yes, properly done. So I hope that we're getting through. So here we are, facing another problem area. What do we do? And already the government has said that they will not go 100%. They won't actually, they don't want, they're contacting the Ukrainian authorities. They don't want to contact the Russian authorities because that gives a legitimacy to the court. Well, that's all very well if the bullet is aimed at you, is you would like them to just simply say, hey, this is wrong, stop it. We don't do that anymore. The Jenkins-era war has gone beyond the pale. Oh dear me. What's the time? It's 9:07, and it's the 10th of June, 2022. Today is going to reach 19, and it will be a scattered cloud. In other words, we'll get periods of sunshine and periods of cloud from about 8 o'clock onwards. What time is it now? It is, it's 9 o'clock. So we should start to see a fairly steady drip of sunshine from here on in, even though the clouds will drift across. Okay. What else should we be looking at this fine morning? Now, one of the things that, let's just take a look at this, shall we? Lewis from a different angle. Well, should be. Here we come. And there we are, Lewis from above. An interesting view. Now, just so that we, I think that we can get rid of that. So we've got a clean slate. One of the things that common sense has prevailed. Is that, hang on, here we go. Right. Roger says, where's the sound? And in fact, on that little from above is there was no sound because it was a drone that was, and I think actually probably breaking the law when it was done, and it was just shooting the stuff. So thank you for pointing out that there is no sound on that, but I think you should have the sound from the rest of the operation, if in fact our streaming is working okay this morning. There's a little thing that sort of tells you the strength, and it's looking a bit weak at the moment, but it's done that in the past, and it seems to be okay. So I hope that people can see us. So Roger, welcome to us. Though I'm glad that wherever you may be, that you have a little giggle and a little laugh with us about things that aren't very laughable at the moment. Certainly, I can't think, in all my years of journalism, I can't think where we've woken up and where you have to really bargain as to what should be the top story. So many big things happening. And day in, day out, we've just got heavyweight stories. And of course, they keep on being pushed aside and we keep forgetting about them. But we try to take a sort of balanced view on this program up until 9:30 anyway, and then we get unbalanced. we go away and then we come back being a bit less formal. Now, the other, apart from the Gin and Fizz Festival returning to Lewes and getting its license at the last minute, is the other piece of news is that the District Council have picked up the baton, and they've taken responsibility apparently for the Lewes Castle walls, which collapsed and threatened some houses. Residents can now go back to the houses, and I would hopefully, and I'm going to check this out myself in a day or two, perhaps over the weekend, is they've cleared going to look at the Magic Garden, which is in the off Castle-Ditch Lane and in the shadow of the castle itself. And it's a lovely little garden. It's a lovely little garden in which we are able to sit and contemplate with very nice plants and very nice surroundings. Whereas it was previously one of those areas where anybody who wanted to shoot up a bit of heroin could go and nobody would bother them. So let's hope that that's revealed as the wall has been stabilized. That's good news. We need some good news this morning because there's sweet bugger all in the national press to help us. Sweet be all indeed. All right, let's see if we got other things. Right, Roger, I'm going to hide that because I think it's not something that you would want shown around. But I will look at your post. Right, Roger Middleton used to work for Sir Jocelyn Stevens, and well, I tell you what, Roger, you live at Clevedon, and you said that there's some grumpy old people there. Wherever you take old people and put them together, you'll get some grumpies. But I am the biggest grumpy of them all, and I live there as well. So if you bump into me in the corridor, I could go grumpy, grumpy, grumpy. You don't even have to watch Mirador television to find grump. And good for you to come on this morning and vent your spleen, as it were. So delighted to have you. Absolutely delighted to have you. And obviously a great curmudgeon. World's curmudgeons unite. There we go. Let us now just see if before we've got 7 minutes or so to the end of this for part one. Let us share something that is worth perhaps looking at. That's a bit long. And so is that. What we'll do is we'll show, which we have throughout the week, the end of the year 2020, which gives you some idea of the things that we were up to at Mirador just as lockdown came on board.
Next up, bottle poetry. All about wine tasting, and some information. For the next episode of Kathleen's Corner, the lovely Stephen has another issue he wants to discuss.
Welcome to Mirador.
Give us back our town. Beer, wine.
So, thank you for joining.
Hey, Ellie, come on, give us a kiss. Come on.
Do admire the hanging gardens of Babylon on the way. They can't even cut that back properly.
Hello. At last I've caught you asleep.
You did hold up a Bible upside down, but you held it up.
Hey there.
Hello, my name is Leslie Hills and I paint portraits. They're sold for cancer research, and this Christmas Mirador Television are putting on a competition just for fun, and I'd like you to send in a self-portrait and also a photograph of themselves as well.
Are you working? I'm filming. You're gonna have to work now.
Morning. We lost our feed.
Breaking news, November 19th. Carl Stokes, elected mayor of the city of Cleveland, Ohio. The first Black American man of color to be elected to mayor of a major American
Hi,
city.
welcome to Mirador Television. My name is Mark Payton, and I'm outside the offices of Stratton Parker and Lewis. Adrian Passingham, the partner there, is going to talk to us now about the property market in 2020. Over to you, Adrian.
I'm Adrian Passingham. I've been an estate agent for 38 years, predominantly in Sussex. Property's been a passion, always has been. My father was estate agent before me, which I suppose has probably led me into it.
We can't kick.
Yeah,
What one do you want us to?
if you start with the one on your right.
On our right.
This one.
This one, yeah.
It's,
Okay.
it's looks good.
Well, it
You
doesn't
see,
look
this
too
one
bad.
doesn't look as appetising,
Oh, no,
so
it's-
I'd almost want to go for that one first to get it over and done with.
See, this one looks more homemade to me.
Oh, okay.
Actually, because that's the sort of design I would make. We've made
Yes,
that
that's
before.
true.
Next up, Stephen Catlin, who has a very interesting announcement to make this week.
Hello everyone and welcome to this brand new programme where we're going to be talking about all things Strictly Come Dancing.
An upsurge in community spirit, because I do think that the pandemic has brought out the very best in people. So, you know, it's been a terrible experience, but I think it has had a silver lining in the sense that people are looking after their neighbours. They are running food banks. They are doing their very best for each other.
Well, that was a funny story too, but you know, Lewis's economy right now is largely a retirement-based community. We're about 2 hours and 20 minutes, 2 hours and a half from Baltimore, Philadelphia, and Washington. So we draw from those areas primarily for retirement.
Well, let me apologise because, strangely enough, just as I apologise, So a surge came back, and it looks as if perhaps we got a decent, or we'll get a decent picture, but the picture has been just absolutely lousy, and there's not much we can do about it because it's all to do with the internet, which is this morning has decided to play up far beyond what it normally does, and there's not much I can do about it except hope that it improves in the next little while. So we're sorry about that. But it is 9:27 and time for us to call a halt to this part of the program anyway. So we'll do that, and hopefully when we come back in 10 minutes time, we will have a much better idea of whether we've got a decent picture or not. So for the moment, and I'm sorry that you suffered a bad picture, bad reception this morning. Our fault, it's not yours. And we'll talk to you in a little while.